in the early 70s, I was thinking about the word decorative, which was the most pejorative word when I went to graduate school than anyone could say about a painting. And I was also very immersed in the early years of the feminist movement. And when at a certain point I realized, and some other artists realized, that the decorative was associated with women and people of other cultures, we decided to embrace it and stop worrying about it. And so I started making these paintings that were based on patterns from my experience, mostly from architecture, even though everybody thinks they look like quilts. I spent some time in Mexico, and this painting is called Three Facades. It's based on the Churrigueresque churches around the city of Puebla, and they are a combination of brick and tile. And this was for me is for me a very iconic painting, because I had been doing small scale studies, but it was the first really strong painting I made. This one is called Striped Cathedral, and I extended this process, and this is like 1977. I'm moving through this early work, which is not in the show, and does not involve maps. This painting, Striped Cathedral, was inspired by the Romanesque churches in central Italy that have stripes in their facades. So it's a series of them, and the painting is 15 feet long, 6 feet high. I did a series of paintings which were on this scale, which felt architectural to me, which felt necessary because they were about architecture. And I wanted to somehow evoke the feeling of moving through the streets of a city and seeing things sequentially rather than taking them in all at once. And then this one, you just have to imagine that these have a very different palette from what you're seeing, because color is very important to me. They have an earthy, deep quality, not a pastel quality of color. But this is called Three Portals Pink Triangle, and it was painted in around 1978, and it's again 6 feet by 15 feet. And what was happening to me as I was kind of thinking that I was like moving into off the canvas and onto the wall. It wasn't really, it was more architectural in my mind. And so after this, I started working in other materials and in craft materials. I would be speaking to an audience like this, usually students, and someone who worked in the crafts said, "You're not breaking down the hierarchy between high art and craft," which was what I was thinking I was doing, unless you start working in craft materials, which I had no experience with and I was not good at. But I made this project called An Interior Decorated, and in 1979, and it was shown in 4 different places, and in each place I adapted the elements to the architecture of the room. So this is a little section of the floor. I rolled out the clay with a rolling pin and cut the shapes with cookie cutters. And there are something like, 25 pilasters in that room, which are 8 feet high and 8 inches wide. And you can see them, I think you can see them there. And each one has got different motifs in it. And the tiles on the floor are painted with many, many different images from decorative arts of different cultures. I was copying them out of books. My skill wasn't so good, but I was learning. And then I wanted it to feel like a kind of very sumptuous room. And I went to a place called the Fabric Workshop in Philadelphia, which still exists, and many artists have worked there. And I did these silks, which are silk screened, and the imagery is Islamic and Egyptian. I called it Tut's Wallpaper. And this is a later installation of some parts of it in Vienna in 2018. Most of these pieces are in European collections. We formed a group of artists called the Pattern and Decoration Group, and the Europeans bought our work, so most of our major pieces are there. And they've been shown more recently again in European museums. But I like this installation. I don't know even what you can see in that slide, but what they did is they cut away into the wall, and through the wall you can see a painting by the artist Robert Zekanich, a wonderful painting, and he's a terrific painter. He's a friend of mine. Okay, and then I had the opportunity, I got an inquiry about submitting slides for a public art commission in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and lo and behold, I got it, and it's a mural in the Harvard Square subway station, which is actually falling into disrepair because water is seeping in, wall was badly designed. But in any case, this is how it looked. If you can imagine intense color, this is how it looked when it was installed in 1985. And it's called New England Decorative Arts, and it has passages that you move through as you go. Well, here's the next. That's looking down the ramp. This is a pedestrian ramp. And you're getting this bright red in there that is not the color. And then this is from the bottom looking up. So it's a quite steep ramp. And my artwork, when you're at the top of the ramp, you're close to it at the beginning. And then as you move down the ramp, it gets further away from you. But when you get to the top of the right ramp, you get closer to it at the other end. So I thought about that, and the more detailed elements are at either end. And these are gravestones, New England gravestones. There are 4 types, sad angels, death heads, urns, and weeping willows. And so I painted all of those. These are painted with low fire glazes, for those of you who do ceramics, which was a mistake, but I didn't know it. In any case, this next section has bowsprits, weather vanes, and silhouettes. And those are some details. And the center section, I want to see something. Okay. Yeah, you know, this is looking very pale and pastel-y, which it isn't. But this center section is a New England landscape. And in the early days of this country, there were people who went from house to house and stenciled patterns and landscapes through repeating imagery. And it was too expensive to import wallpaper from Europe, so they had this stenciling thing. And I started looking at pictures of these landscapes and these houses, and this became the center of the whole artwork. Okay. Oh, I think are we going back? I'm going back. These are some details of the landscape. And I didn't use stencils. I painted them, but I looked at books of how the stenciled artworks looked. And then there are 2 quilt sections color is completely different from this, believe me. And quilts were the kind of iconic woman's art, and they have a place at either end of the piece. And now this is another piece, another public piece, which the first half was finished in '91, and this is called The Movies. The first half is fantasies, the second half is spectacles. I did it because it's in Los Angeles. It was a new transit system there, and Los Angeles is the city of the movies. And the first section is 110 feet long and 2 feet high. I thought of it like a film strip going through, and as you walk through toward your train, you would see these images. And it's in 10 passages, 10 chapters, and there's a little separation between them with solid colors. But, okay, I have to see what's coming up. Not going forward. It's not moving. Can somebody help me? Okay, all right. So it starts with flying monsters. So each section is 10 feet long, and then it's swimming monsters, and then it's stalking monsters. I'm not showing you all of them, I'm showing you some of them. These are monsters with big brains, and as I started, going through books and finding these images, I realized that these monsters evoke the fears and phobias of different time periods. So I thought of monsters with big brains as fear of smart people. Let's go back. Wait. And these are apes and werewolves. I know those normal guys during the day who at night start becoming werewolves. And actually, I didn't realize I put so much of this in this talk. These are strange plants and insects, and ghouls and vampires. And then it starts with the flying monsters, and then it ends with space flight. Okay, now we're going to the other side of the station, and that was installed 2 years later, 1993, and the first side was called Fantasies, the second side is called Spectacles, and that's about the movies that are musicals and spectacles of one kind or another. And I wanted to do that for color, because the first side was really a series of black and white portraits. This is more of a breakout. So what I did, I did the elements: fire, water. Oh, so we're going to walk through it. So this is fire, and this is air, and this is earth. Yeah, that's all I'm showing you of that. I don't know why. Okay, this piece, which is green in real life, is called Calvino's Cities on the Amazon. It's a combination. It's on paper. It's a combination of acrylic on paper and collage. It's based on the book Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, and I did the piece in '95. It's 60 inches by 112 inches, and it's the book, some of you may have read the book, Invisible Cities. It has these short passages about different imaginary cities. And the story I'm having a senior moment. I'm going to come back to this. Okay, this is another public art project. It's in Mankato, Minnesota. It's a public piece in a state university, Mankato State University. And it's 12 tile murals. This one I completed in 1995, and it's called Around the World on the 44th Parallel. Usually when I did a public art project, there was something from the history or the culture of the city that gave me a link to an idea. There I just wasn't sure. I mean, it's a large state university in Minnesota. So what I realized, looking at the globe, is that it's on the 44th parallel, which is pretty northern, and I went around the globe on that line, and I found cities in 3 continents on the 44th parallel: Europe, North America, and Asia. So Mankato is the first city that you will see where we are. It isn't even really a city, but this is looking from the back through them. So it drops from the mezzanine. It drops down from the mezzanine, so you can see it from up there, and if you're on the lower level, you can see it by looking up. And I've left binoculars at the table so people can get closer. The first one is Mankato, where it is, the starting point. And I wanted people to be able to see their streets. And I did a lot of things to these. I did this this piece is Mayolica, for those of you who are in ceramics. This was done in a ceramics factory in Los Angeles. So it's done in an overglaze. And we added things to it. So I used some of the techniques they use in this factory. They have these dotting brushes, and I started using those. In Mankato, I referred to the jewelry of the Native Americans who lived and migrated through the area. And so there's beading, and I did that with the dotting brushes. And also, I put these little squares on, which were earthquake damaged tiles, to kind of look like where people would be living. And you see, I don't know if you can see, these are decals of boys fishing. Fishing is a big thing in Minnesota, and it's kind of a Norman Rockwell image. The guy who runs the factory, Dennis Caffrey, is a ceramicist, and he kept introducing to me these new techniques, and some of them are hobbyist techniques. So these are decals, and he had hundreds of them that I cut up and used all over the surface, almost in a decorative way. This is Sarajevo, all bleached out. They're all 4 by 14 feet. They're on 1-foot square tiles. And Sarajevo was under siege. The 44th parallel dips down as the globe turns. So in fact, in Europe, it goes through central Italy, for instance. And so it went through Sarajevo in Yugoslavia, what was Yugoslavia, and it was during the Balkan Wars. And I wanted to include imagery that was both Christian and Muslim. I've never been there, so I found the imagery from books. I'm showing, I think, one from each continent. There's each bay. There are 3 bays. And, okay, this is Asia. And this is the city of Changchun, where I've never been, in Western China. And when I read about it, I read that it was the film capital of China. So this is the area where the film studios are. And Dennis brought these molds that hobbyists use into the factory, and we poured the liquid clay in them, and we made pagodas and bumblebees. You can see them, and then we epoxy them on the surface. And carp. Okay, can't see. Eek. All right, I don't think I can talk about this. It's too bleached out. This is in the show. So you can see this upstairs. I did a series of paintings called Bodies of Water in the late 1990s. I'd been sailing with a friend on in the Baltic Sea in the archipelago outside of Stockholm. And I was fascinated by the nautical charts that he needed to navigate. So there are 3 paintings in this series, and this is actually the one that's upstairs in the show. It's called Bodies of Water, Cities of China. I could better talk to you about it there than here. There are, I always have layers, and sometimes they're irrational. I had this old book someone gave me, which was a travel guide to China from 1920-something, and I cut up the maps of the cities, put them on the Baltic Sea. Whoops. And this is another one from the series. This is called Bodies of Water Songlines. And this is about in Australia, where I've never been. The people, the young men, I don't think women, go out and walk at their age 13 and supposedly follow the lines, the song lines in the earth of their ancestors. And the bodies, so these paintings are called Bodies of Water. The bodies are from charts of the digestive system, the different parts of the body, and my chiropractor had these charts hanging in her office, and I loved them, and she told me I could buy them from a catalog. This is pre-Amazon, so I ordered them, and I cut them up and put them into the painting. And this is a mother and a baby with an umbilical cord, and then these are 2 different figures. These paintings are about 5 or 6 feet square. So that's a detail. So it's the respiratory system, the digestive system. Now this is upstairs, so I don't have to dwell on it too much. I was at the American Academy in Rome in the year 1999-2000, and I had a very big studio with a very high ceiling, and I wanted to make something to justify this grand space that I was working in. And I had been working in mapping, and I was walking through Rome and looking at buildings right down the hill from the Academy, which is on the Gianicolo Hill. There is a precious, precious building called the Tempietto of Bramante, and it's underscaled and it's round, and that was part of what I was imagining, and then the light coming through from the Pantheon. And also, in the palaces of the nobility, there would be a library, and there would be two very large globes, the celestial globe and the terrestrial globe. So I decided I wanted to make a globe. I found people who were able to build it. And that's what you see upstairs. I wanted you to be, I knew it had to be painted on the inside. I mean, to me, there's something female and nurturing about that. And so each section of it is a place that had been bombed in the world by the US between the end of World War II, 1945, and the year 2000, which was when I finished the piece. And they're at different angles so that you can imagine being in an airplane, a bomber plane, going over the earth. As you know, if you've been upstairs, the colors are not like this. And here's some details. And if you go inside and close the door behind you, there's an echo if you speak, which is how this particular shape, it amplifies sound. I don't know if I... Well, this is the closest I came to making the celestial globe. This is called Dark and Light Continents. And if you look at books of mapping and cartography, you see how a globe is constructed from these gores, which are drawn and then on paper, and on the old globes they would be cut and they would be fitted onto them. And so this is a long piece, 72 inches. No, wait a second. 96 inches by 192 inches from 2002. In my second layer in the piece is the lines of satellites in space. So I wanted to make it contemporary. It's based on an old chart, and it's also based on an image that was going around the internet at that time of, you can't see it very well, but the image that many people were interested in showed the parts of the earth that were lit and the parts of the earth that were dark. And North America and Europe were very bright, and the other continents were mostly bright around the edges. Wait. Okay, so this is a detail of North America, which shows you how bright it was, if you can read it. And, okay. Now, this is a big installation I did in Venice in the early part of this century, 2006. And I brought together a lot of different parts of my work. I called it Voyages. There's a few pieces from it in this show. This space is a space for the study of the hydraulics of the Venetian lagoon. And there are hundreds of scientists working there, and big machines with water, and they sometimes do art exhibitions during years when there's other things going on in Venice. And this was during the Architectural Biennale, which is every other year when there's not an art biennale. So I had the opportunity to do the whole space, and I had to expand my very detailed work to that scale. So I'm going to show you some of the things I made. But I called it Voyages because this is the Arsenale of Venice. This is not the Arsenale where the art exhibition is during the big show, but if you take the Vaporetto around the back, you get to this place where this research is going on. And so it's a vast space, and I had to think about it. And I called it Voyages because in this space, in the 16th century, ships were built for the explorers who went around the world and basically conquered the world. And Venice was the hub of that. And this would have been one of the key shipbuilding places. So I made 65 masks, and they're in the window panes. And there were 65 window panes in that room. And they're maps of islands all over the world. And these are just two examples of them. In Venice, they sell these masks, which is a tourist thing, and the Venetians hate them. But I met this artist couple who was making them as their day job, and they gave me the masks unpainted, or I bought the masks unpainted from them. It's paper pulp it's made from. And I had maybe 3 different faces. I bought a whole lot of them from them. And then I painted them each with an island somewhere in the world. Venice is an island. I live on the island of Manhattan. And so this is like going around the world. And so this one is the island of Sumatra. And this is the Venetian fleet on the way to Constantinople. Most of the maps that I used were from the Age of Discovery, which was the Renaissance, and the period of European expansion. And I guess I might have a few more to show you. Okay, so I also made these 14-foot hanging pieces. You couldn't hang anything on the walls because it's Venice and the walls are very moist. And there wasn't any gallery light. It was very dependent on what kind of day it was, what hour of the day. The light was the ambient light. And so I had to hang things. And because it has something like 40-foot ceilings, I wanted to move things up. And I made these the pieces that you're seeing hanging there. There are 2 upstairs in the show, and I'll move in on those and show them to you. So these are the hangings that were between the windows, which have to do with Carnival, starting with Venetian Carnival and then showing Carnival around the work, Carnivale. Targets was in there. And the hanging pieces, I don't have a very good slide of the hanging pieces here. Oh, I do. I missed some things. Okay. So this is looking through it, and this is looking up. And there were, I made 2 series. I made these on another island. I made these hangings on the island of Maui, where I was invited to make woodblock prints. And they're 7 feet tall, and they're on rice paper, and they're multicolored. There's 2 images in the series. One is of Maui, where they were made, and one is of Kaho'olawe, which is a small adjacent island. The 2 upstairs are of Kaho'olawe. That island was used, you know, Hawaii is part of the United States. It was used as a U.S. Navy bombing range during the 20th century. It's been given back to the Hawaiian people. And there's a group that goes out there every week to try and clean up the ordnance, and it's going to be habitable in 100 years. So you can take a look at them when you're upstairs. That's Maui on the left, and that's Kaho'olawe, which you can see from high points on Maui. You can see, and I drew it and made an etching. You can see that island off the coast, a small island off the coast of Maui. Anyway, somehow that entered the project in Venice. And these are the masks, and it shows you, you know, what I was talking about how the light comes through their eyes. Okay, so now I think I've talked about most of the elements here. And targets has been shown in many places. I like to say it's crossed the Atlantic more times than I have. You may recognize the person in the center. This group of my masks, there's something called art in embassies, which is part of the State Department. I don't know, they may have gotten rid of it, but they, during each different presidency, there's an art consultant who presents projects to the administration, and they choose what they want. So I was very happy that this was shown in Rome at the American ambassador to Rome during the Obama administration. And then at the end of the 8-year Obama administration, it came back to me. It was on loan. And that's the ambassador and his wife and President Obama. I was not there when the photograph was taken, but they very kindly sent it to me. And I wasn't allowed to show this photograph during that administration. And then I did these round paintings, these tondi, and there are 2 series. I think this may be the one that's upstairs. There were 2 called Helium on the Moon, because I was reading that there's going to be a race in space for the helium on the moon. But I used these star charts from 1600 and overlaid the tracks of space travel today. Now, this is a very dark painting. You have to believe me. And I'll tell you what it's called. It's called The Days and Hours and Moments of Our Lives. And it's 2007. And the other one was called Helium on the Moon, also that same time. They're 60 inches in diameter. This is the Ebsdorf map, upon which my piece, which you may have seen upstairs, G's, is based. This was a key monument of the Middle Ages. Very, very important. It made in the year 1234 by Gervais of Ebsdorf. And I made this piece in the same scale as the original in 2012. Mine is 144 inches by 144 inches, 12 feet square. It was the biggest and major medieval world map, very detailed and full of Bible stories, which was part of medieval cartography. It was destroyed in World War II it was in a church in Germany that was bombed by the Allies, and it was destroyed. but there are copies of it and pictures of it. And a curator came to me and two other artists working in cartography, one in England and one in India, and asked us to riff on the Ebsdorf map. And I'd been looking at it for years, so I got very interested in it. And if you look at it, if you can see, these are the feet of Christ, that's the head of Christ, and these are the hands of Christ. So the whole map is based on the body of Christ. And so I started copying it, and it ended up, I painted, I think, 130 images of Jesus on my version of it. Wait. This is my version of it, which I call G's. And I copied everything that was on the Ebsdorf map. And then I started to add images from popular culture, from art history, from other cultures, and I had great fun doing it. It was done on 2-foot square panels. I can't work on that scale anymore. So it just went on and on. The imagery was endless. And going back, I thought I was finished. I filled it up with so much stuff. I didn't paint the corners originally. I just painted the center. And then a friend came to my studio and said, well, what about the baby Jesus? And I said, there's no more space. And then what I ended up is putting the babies in the corners. So you'll see it better upstairs. And this is the original map upon which my piece, The Tempest, is based. This is a 18th century Chinese map of the world. And the stylization of cartography is different in every culture, and it's something that I explored a lot in my work. And I love this map, which is in the British Library, and I contacted someone who sent me a high-res image of it. And again, I copied everything on it, and then I started layering other stuff on top. So this is upstairs, and you'll see it when you go upstairs. And this is my first piece that has objects attached to the surface. And it didn't happen at first, but people always give me globes, and they always think they're the first person to ever think of giving me this. So I had a collection of globe earrings, globe paperweights that people had given me, and I started putting all this stuff on the piece. And then I started looking for other stuff. So, and then I went on eBay, and I bought a globe paperweights and globe salt and pepper shakers and globe erasers, and you'll see as I move through it. And it was really fun. And, whoops, what did I do? Okay. So there are these objects on the surface. This is Atlas holding up the world in the center. This is one of my favorites. And all this painting is a copy of the original. Then I started adding these little images, which I had about 30 of, and I've been saving for a long time. I didn't know why, but they're images which are engravings that were made during the Age of Discovery of the great European cartographers pointing to a globe to explain it to people. And they were like rock stars. They were very, very famous in their day, and everybody, listened to them. And I thought these images were funny right from the beginning. I should have given you more of a close-up, but and then I'm just finding all this stuff with globes. Those are cookie jars. And then we're getting closer to the present. My mother died, and my sister-in-law and I were cleaning out the attic of their house, my parents' house, and I found these two folders with my childhood art. And from the age of 9 to 11, I was making maps. And I did not remember that. And this was the first one that I did. I thought I was only going to do this one. It's called Autobiography. And I grew up in New Jersey. So it's New York and New Jersey. My adult life has been in New York. And this map, the Manatas map, this is the first map of New York, European map of New York. And all of these are the things I added. It's about 5 feet square. And so I did a whole show of these. I didn't know that I was going to keep going with it, but I kept going with it until I used up all my drawings. This one is called Art Girl, and then I started adding my childhood art collection, which was also in my mother's house. It was more her collection than mine, actually, because I didn't play with these dolls. She collected them. And this one is a young woman holding a canvas. So that's why I call it Art Girl. And so this is based on a early map, and all of my juvenilia is on top of it. And this one is called The Giant of New Jersey. And this is my school picture. That's me, maybe second or third grade. And I made this giant in class in second grade. And when I had my first show in New York, I got this envelope, and my second grade teacher sent this to me, sent me the bumblebee, which is in another one, and the giant. And she said, I always knew you'd be an artist, and I saved them. But it's, as you see, it was all crumbling, and it's all broken and everything. But it's crayon, and I did a lot of crayon in this series. Okay, this is another, am I running out of time? I didn't do much public art in this century. I did most of it earlier. But in the recent years, I did 2 new public art projects. And this one is a subway station in New York. And strangely enough, it's at the corner of where I lived, my first address in New York. And I went to this subway station to take the train to my job and come home from my job every day. So these are, there are 2 entrances to the station. If you know New York, it's a local station. So the uptown track is on one level and the downtown track is on the other level. So the steps go down in between. So I did these spaces where you go down the steps from one level to the other. And then these are really bleached out people. But on the platforms, there are 2 pieces on the uptown level and 2 on the lower level. And, I should talk about the imagery. What it is, these are views of that intersection, which is 86th Street and Central Park West. And I used a lot of Google Earth for the first time. So it's like looking down at that intersection with Central Park and with 86th Street going across. And there are different views throughout the project. And the decorative imagery is from the buildings which are right above the station. And there's some beautiful, beautiful buildings along Central Park West. And the first day when the station opened, someone came in and said, "Oh, that's my building," which was really nice. So I said it's all 4 seasons. So this is winter in Central Park, and winter in the city. And this is very important, but you can't see it. In the center, I should say that this is a combination of glass mosaic and ceramic tile. And I work with mosaicists in a little town in the north of Italy. And I've been working with them since the 1980s, but I don't think I showed any before. It's very detailed, that section in the middle, which is a map of Seneca Village. What was Seneca Village? Seneca Village was a community in the area that later became Central Park, a black community, an African-American community. And when Central Park was, when the land was drained and Central Park was built, that community was destroyed. And there's been a resurgence of interest in it. There's a plaque, and it's right underneath the subway station, that area. This is the longest section. So what this is you're inside the train. It's a narrow landing. And they thought, when they talked to me, that I would make something like a rectangle on the wall. But I was thinking architecturally. I wanted the person who gets off the train onto the landing to feel like they're entering another space. So I wanted my piece to come all the way up to the ceiling. And at that time, this is a very old station, and the percent for budget was just for their renovations. But across the top, there are all these pipes. And so they said, you can't do it. And then the woman who ran the wonderful program of art in the subways, Sandra Bloodworth, did something and got the pipes removed so that I could do it. And so all of these pieces are, when you get off the train, they're right in front of you. And so it's a combination of the park in the autumn, the park in the winter, park in the summer, and also going across the city, and then these decorative elements which are nearby. If you get to New York, you'll see it's got very vibrant color. And this part is really straight across the intersection there. Okay, and this is my last public art project, which I just finished a couple of years ago, for a courthouse, for a federal courthouse in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's a big project, and these are very big spaces. For instance, eye level is about here. So these are way above your head. You see the doorway? They're way above your head, these panels. And those upper panels are 14 feet high. The lower panels are 5 feet high. I'm going to walk you through them, and there's a virtual reality upstairs which walks you through them, so maybe I shouldn't dwell on it that much. But I'm always looking for some local subject matter, and Greenville, South Carolina was, in the early 20th century, there was a big sign in the center of the town that said textile capital of the world. So it was a huge center for textile mills. The cotton was grown down at the coast, and there was a lot of trade commerce that took the cotton up to the areas where the mills were, and then in the mills they made the textiles, but they didn't print patterns on them. That went somewhere else. And this was from the middle of the 19th century till the middle of the 20th century, when all of that industry went overseas. But to go back, there are 8 of these upper level panels, and they are of mills. So if you can read it, this is Victor Mill, Alice Mill, Camperdown Mill. And I went on Google Earth, and there had been hundreds of mills in that area, and I was looking for ones that were still extant and visible on Google Earth. And I found 8. With some difficulty, I found 8. Some of them are in use. A couple of them are in use. Some of them have been made into condos or shopping malls, and some of them are just falling into ruin. And what you see on the surface on top of them is the weave pattern of what was made at that mill. So that was hard to find. That information was I really had to dig for that information, strangely enough. And then on the lower level, so here's 3 of them: Alice Mill, Newry Mill, and Huguenot Mill. And as you see, there's a different, and these are printed on tiles with high-fire silkscreen glazes in Italy, in Bergamo, Italy. And you see the Google Earth images of the factories, of the mills. And so on the lower level, and you can see the real color if you watch on the virtual reality, I have 6 maps of the area in different time periods. This one is very early, 1630. This is before there was a North and South Carolina. It was just the Carolinas. And around 3 of them, the patterns are based on Cherokee baskets. Cherokee were the original inhabitants of the area. And this is a very interesting one. This map from 1777, also with a basket pattern, is a map of the land that was ceded by the Cherokee to the state of South Carolina. And you see there's these different lines, the yellow line and the red line. Different pieces of the land was ceded at different times. And when I was installing it, it wasn't open to the public. The people who were in the building were constructing it, working on it. And one of them came over to me and said, "Oh, I have this map in my house. So I guess it may be a widely circulated map." I didn't know that. And this one is the map of the railroads. And I had to simplify this to do it in mosaics, because cutting out words in mosaics is very, very challenging for the mosaicists, who are wonderful. So I reduced the amount of words in all of these. But anyway, this is the last one. This is from 1920. And those are quilt patterns. Okay, now this is the far wall. So you have these vertical images on the side walls. The far wall is Chiquola Mill in Honia Path, which is 25 miles from Greenville. And in doing my research, this is not something I had ever read about. This is the side. That's a South Carolina tartan pattern. This is the center, and this was Chiquola Mill, which is a ruin. It's based on photographs I took. I went around, and from aerial photographs from Google Earth. But this was the site of a very big 1934 national textile strike, and this is the site of the worst massacre in American labor history. And I didn't know that until it's not taught or known about, but this factory, Chiquola Mill, the textile workers went on strike. 1 million people were on strike in America at that time, and it was centered in the textile industry. And the man who was the mayor of the town also owned the factory and brought out a militia. They were unarmed, they were holding pickets, and started shooting them, and 7 textile workers died, and many more were hospitalized. And there's no plaque or anything there, so I decided to make it the center of my piece. Just going back, it's in the center of the piece. And there's a wall label underneath which tells the story. Now these paintings, the next to last series of paintings, these are called Uncivil Wars. And they're Civil War battle maps which were made by soldiers, some Confederate soldiers, some Union soldiers, that I found in books and online. And I chose the most important major battles, and I made paintings of them, copying the maps and painting them in my way, and then adding viruses. This was during COVID, and I wasn't sure at all, but when I was down in South Carolina working with, this is right after I did that project, and I feel something very connected about the two bodies of work. The Civil War is very present down there, and across from where I stayed in Greensville, there's this big cemetery with a lot of Civil War monuments and Confederate flags, and I hadn't seen that before. Now we're seeing it more. This was, let's say, this was 2019 when I was first down there, and so that's why I started thinking about the Civil War, and which I had not thought about. And most of my work has not been about American history. I was focused on other cultures. So I did this series about the Civil War during COVID, and I put these viruses on them. These are not necessarily the ones that were in that are upstairs, but they're in the same series. This is Gettysburg. This is Charlottesville, Gettysburg. I wrote it down. Right. Okay. This is Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh, which was a lot of loss of life in this one. And the viruses are rather virulent in this one. Okay, that's Gettysburg. And that's Petersburg. And that's Vicksburg. When you're copying things so closely, you start paying attention to what you're writing. And like on this one, there are all these names, and they're people's names, they're family names of who lived in that area. And I'm working on this day after day, and it's a county, and this person lived here, and this person lived here, and this person lived here. And then you see the same names. You see the same names because they're family members. And I was very interested in the fact that they're all Anglo-Saxon names. Anyway, our populace has changed a lot since the Civil War. Okay. And this one is upstairs. This is Chattanooga. And that was an important battle, actually. And that has the coronavirus, the COVID virus. The viruses they're all viruses from different diseases. And the last one in the series, Appomattox Courthouse, is the final, for those of us who studied American history, which is probably all of us, is the final battle of the war. And I have an explosion of viral images. And it kind of looks like a happy picture, like a celebration because the war is over. But at the same time, there are viruses, and the war. There was just catastrophic losses during that war. So then this series, which is the most recent, and then I'll let you go. Is called Collateral Damage. And they're all 60 inches by 60 inches. There's no collage on any of these, or the last series. They're just painted. And they're places that were currently at war when I painted them. So they're the places that are in the news all the time. This is the Horn of Africa. So you hear about these battles now in Somalia and Yemen and in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. And the imagery is from, in books I found pictures of these beautiful painted houses, stucco houses with the windows painted and the doorways painted, and that became the imagery. But I just have to explain why. Collateral damage, usually when we hear about collateral damage, it's human life and monuments. And I went to a kind of seminar or kind of conference about this. And the first thing that armies do when they invade a country or a city is they destroy the monuments. They destroy the statues and the churches and the mosques and the synagogues, whatever that represents the culture and the memory of the culture that the people have. So I wanted to talk about that, and in a very current way. And so I was finding representations of the culture, but I didn't want to do the Bamiyan sculptures or, I wanted to do the objects of daily life, the objects that people have in their homes and that were in their families, that carry that memory as it gets destroyed. And this one is upstairs. This is the Sahel. This is the western part of Africa, the former French colonies, which are there's many wars that have been going on in that area when I was painting it and now. And those are textiles of that region. And this is Kashmir, which is upstairs, where I've never been, but I've seen a lot of pictures of the life on the water, the riverboats, and those riverboats appear in the decorative arts and in the painting from Kashmir. And you can see it better upstairs, but the imagery of the life on the water and the boats is what I put in this painting. And there just was another outbreak of this ongoing conflict between India and Pakistan since 1948. And this one is not in the show, and it's much darker. This one, originally, when I started it was about the war in Syria, and the region of Rojava, where the Kurdish people were fighting against the regime in Syria, and then just as I was finishing the painting, there was this outbreak in Gaza, so that became part of the piece. These pieces changed as things changed in the world. This isn't the only one where I thought I finished the painting and something broke out and I added to it. And this one is Iran and Afghanistan. And I haven't been to Afghanistan, but I've been to Iran. And so I knew how I wanted to make Iran. Having gone to Isfahan and been in those incredible mosques, I wanted to evoke that. In Afghanistan, that imagery is from carpets. And this one is upstairs. This is Xinjiang province in western China. And where the Chinese are oppressing the Uyghur people. And I had been there before this all happened. So all the things that I'm depicting, I'm sure have been destroyed. They were in my cell phone. And I've never been to Tibet, but my husband was very ill, and he had a caretaker who was a Tibetan monk. And he helped me find the imagery to represent Tibet.
Great, we have time for a few questions, so I'll bring the mic around. Just put your hand up.
Fabulous, the exhibit upstairs, some of us have seen it, so thank
Yeah.
you. I wonder, do you have time to reflect on what you've done? I mean, what do you think about what you've done now? Do you ever,
Oh, I'm still working.
but do you ever take a minute and just, it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, you just keep going. What I showed you was more than 50 years, you know? So it's a lot of time.
Sleep?
Not very well. But I'm making another globe now. Yeah, I'm going to do the 21st century. You know, I've been thinking about it. It's because that globe ended in the year 2000. And now it's a quarter of a century. So I'm doing a new one. And I want it to be much darker, both in chromatically and emotionally. Because I want the viewer who enters it to feel complicit. Now, I don't know how whether I'm going to be able to do that, but that's my goal.
I was wondering what you thought about the device of virtual reality with respect to your work.
The one that's upstairs?
Yeah, is that the only one?
That's the only one I've done. And it was an early meeting with the Everson staff when Garth suggested that we do one, and I said, "What's that?"
So did we.
But it turned out that the people who made it, a husband and wife media combo, they call themselves, I knew her a long time ago in another life. You know, I mean, I knew her around 1980, and I was doing prints in California at a place called Crown Point Press, and she was making these little booklets about the artist participants, doing interviews, and Robin, her name is, and then I hadn't seen her in decades, and I had a show, one of these last shows. She came to the show, and I said, "Robin, what have you been doing?" And she says, "Well, let's go for a coffee." We go for a coffee, and she says, "I've been doing virtual reality." And I said, "That's strange, because a week ago, someone mentioned virtual reality," meaning Garth, at that meeting. And that's how it happened.
You connected the two of them? Did you connect Robin and her husband with Garth?
Yeah, yeah. And Robin and her husband, Michael. He's more the techie person. And she wrote the text that I read. I worked on it with her, but we did it in a sound room that they use when they do these things, and we did it in one take.
Joyce, we've got a question right here.
Hi. When you were growing up in New Jersey, where in New Jersey was that, and how much of an influence did growing up there affect your work later on? Or, you know, in other words, were you part of the New York scene, New Jersey scene, the beach? Was that affecting your work?
I grew up in central New Jersey. You know, it's shaped like that, right in the center. And it's not, New Jersey has different parts and different, it was a very working class town that was dominated by the Johns Manville asbestos factory. And the town was called Manville. And my father grew up there. My grandfather had a hardware store there. And my father was the town lawyer. And most of the people in the town worked in the factory, in the asbestos factory. I'd say 95%. It was a real company town. And a lot of people died from asbestos. Yeah.
I'm curious about public art.
I've done 17 public art projects.
Yes.
I just showed a couple of them.
Well, some of them seem particularly prescient. You know, here's something to say to us today that maybe you didn't realize, or of course or you realized, whatever. What I'm curious about is, do you ever get pushback about what we choose to portray about the public space, the community? I'm thinking particularly of the one in South Carolina.
That's the most political one I've done. You know, my work was less political in the early years when I was doing those other projects. I mean, for me, it was a different kind of politics, you know. But I didn't get any pushback in South Carolina, no. It was a GSA project, and I had to present it to a group maybe the size of the community. And when I presented it, one guy stood up and said, well, why didn't you depict the factory workers? You know, and he wanted it to be more punchy. And I said, well, you know, trying to explain, an artist has their own visual language, and that's what you have to work with. And I'm not Diego Rivera, you know. I love Diego Rivera, but you know, I couldn't make that kind of an artwork. It's not what I do. But you know, I mean, so that audience had no problem with what I was presenting.
Do you think they would be different now?
I don't know. Well, I don't even know if the GSA exists at this moment. But the administrator who worked at the GSA was lovely, and in the end, I had to submit certain things, photographs, and also a statement about the piece. And she wrote me that when she read my statement, she cried.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's heartening to, you know, the pieces that you did on the Civil War with the virus.
Clearly, the virus became, in effect, kind of a avatar of another civil war that we're currently appear to be engaged in. You know, where people wore masks.
You know, I have had some controversies. One of the issues that's been brought up about my work since the 70s is cultural appropriation. Is that what you were asking about? I mean, and it always makes me very defensive because I didn't understand. I was naive. I thought it was an homage, you know, and that people felt I was appropriating from their culture and it belonged to them. And that became a very strong argument that I've had to defend myself against.
No, I wasn't suggesting.
Well, you know, but working with American things more avoids it.
Right, but it seems to me now that when you know, layer on the idea of a virus as part of the Civil War, and that our lived experience then and now is that the virus became a very divisive thing politically and culturally.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a public artwork, but I really did feel that there's something underneath in this country that's like a virus that flares up at certain times and then lies dormant at other times, and that we were experiencing it again at the same time that we were having this actual virus. And in New York, COVID hit very, very hard. I opened the paper every day, and the bits was somebody that I knew, you know.
Well, it's very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Uh-oh.
Joyce, you and I have touched on this before, but you, in the last series of works, in particular collateral damage, what you're depicting is violence, but in a very beautiful kind of way. Because your work is so, it's just so visually stunning to look at. How do you reconcile showing such horror, but in terms of beauty?
Well, that's the same answer, that's my visual language, you know, and I think that I am very rarely in shows of political art. I don't think many people think of me as a political artist, though I do. But I have this decorative sensibility, and it's always going to be there. It's always there. I mean, sometimes more so and sometimes less so. And the mapping, I didn't really talk that much about why it evolved, but it's another, and I did another body of work which was based on pornography. These are minor arts, the decorative arts, cartography, and they interest me in bringing them into fine art.
But there's always a political kind of sub text
Well,
within.
If everybody doesn't know, Elizabeth is the curator of this show, so she knows the work intimately, and me, but it's not so always obvious to people. And people respond in whatever way they respond.
Thank you, Joyce, for being here and sharing with us. Thanks to everybody for your patience as we were dealing with some technical difficulties. Please go upstairs if you haven't seen the show yet. They look better. You can never represent on a screen what you can see in person. So
Yeah, there was some kind of glitch, and I got very upset. So.
Well, we appreciate everyone's patience, and thank you for your patience, Joyce, and thank you for being here. She'll be around for a little while. If you have any other questions, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer.
Any more
outside.
questions?
We can
Yeah.
Retire here to the
Yeah.
green room for some refreshments.
I would be happier if we did that.
Absolutely. All right, thank you.